How you doing? How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi Daf 98 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends, your friends. Okay, so Lemaise, we really have to do not just 98, but also it's the entirety of Tzadi Zayin Amud Beis, and even a little bit of Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph. The thing is, Tzadi Zayin Amud Beis is really small, and half of it is a Mishnah, and then the other half is Gemara. I mean, it just, I think it makes sense. I mean, we don't have a choice at this point, but I think the reason I did it this way, as I said yesterday, is because I think it just makes sense. We'll get the whole flow. I think even with that, I don't anticipate it being an extremely long daf. There is a little bit of stuff that needs to be explained, but all right, it's going to be gevaldik. Chevre, we've seen Ezehu Neshech, we've seen Hazov, we've seen Shnei Mechsim Betalis, HaMafkid. Chevre, nothing's hard anymore. All right, we're going to start in daf Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the bottom at the Mishnah. Hashoyol es hapore. Okay, it's fine. Of course, somebody's borrowing a cow. Okay, Shimon borrows a cow. Reuven borrows a cow from Shimon. All right. Shola chatzi yom v'sochra chatzi yom. Okay, so he borrowed it. He's a shoyol for half of the day, and he's a socher for half of the day. He borrowed it for half of the day, and he rented it for half of the day. So half the day is a shoyol, half of the day is a socher. Now, of course, there's different halachas by a shoyol and a socher. Shoyol is going to be chayiv for onsin, socher is going to be potter for onsin. So if it drops dead, a shoyol is chayiv, a socher is potter. He has to swear, but then he's potter. Shola ayoyim v'socher l'mocher. Alternatively, if he borrowed it today, but he's renting it for tomorrow. Socher achas v'shal achas. So he rented, Reuven was kind of dealing with 2 cows. One of them he borrowed, the other one he rented. Umesa, and the cow died. So Hamashil Omer Shula Mesa. So of course Shimon, the lender, says it's it was a borrowed cow that died. Either it was during the borrowing hours, or in the borrowing day, or the borrowing cow, whatever it was, right? It was a borrowed cow that died, and therefore you chai ba'onsin, and you have to pay me. Okay? So, she'ula mesa, b'yom sha'isa she'ula mesa, or it died on the day that it was borrowed, in the case that it was borrowed for a day and rented for another day. B'shah sha'isa she'ula mesa, or it, if it was, half the day borrowed, half the day rented, so it was during the borrowed part of the day. Whatever it is, Shimon he's sure that the cow, that it was a borrowed cow that died, and that he deserves to be paid. V'hala oimer, but Reuven says, en yodeh, says ich weiß nicht, I posha don't know. So chayiv. So Reuven needs to pay, right? Shimon says it was a borrowed cow that died. Okay, Shimon said it was a borrowed cow that died, and you were a shoyl, and you have to pay. He says, I don't know, so he has to pay. Hasocher Omer. Now, if it's fakert, if Reuven says schura mesa, it was a rented cow that died. Well, in the case of one rented one and one borrowed one, so it was the rented one that died. B'yom shaisa schura, or if it was one cow, but one day rented, one day borrowed, it died on the rental day. Mesa b'shasha isa schura mesa, or when it was half and half, or half a day this, half a day that, so it was during the rental hours. Whatever it is, Reuven is saying that that a rented cow died, and therefore he's potter for onsin, and he doesn't have to pay. Vala Omer, and Shimon says, En yodeh ich weiß nicht. I wasn't there. I don't know which one died. Potter. Okay, so Reuven does not have to pay, because Reuven's certain that it was a rented cow that died, and socher is potter for onsin. So and Shimon says he doesn't know, so Reuven does not have to pay his potter. Ze omer she'ula v'ze omer sechura. If Shimon says it was a borrowed cow that died and you need to pay me, Reuven says it was a rented cow that died and I don't need to pay you. Yishava asor, right? So in this case, they're both sure. Shimon is sure that it is a borrowed cow that died. Reuven is sure that it is a rented cow that died. So Reuven needs to swear. Yishava asocher. Reuven needs to swear sheschura that it was in fact rented. Sheschura mesa, that the rented one died and therefore he's potter to pay. If he's potter for onsin, okay, and then he'll be potter. He's got to swear. Okay, the Gemara is going to explain this whole Mishnah. Now, if each one says Reuven says, I don't know which died. I don't know if it was a rented cow that died or a borrowed cow that died. Shimon says, guess what? I don't know if it's a rented cow or a borrowed cow that died. So they split it. So they split it. All right. Okie dokie. All right. So look, we're 6 minutes into the daf and we've already done half of Tzadi Zayin Amud Beis. So as I said, we're not really very far behind over here. This is probably where, if I would have done the Mishnah yesterday, this is where we would have started today. So I think it makes sense to just start with the Mishnah and like this we get the whole flow. We're going to go from one Mishnah to the next Mishnah. I think that makes sense. Would you agree with me, friends? Let us know in WhatsApp if you agree with me, okay? Let's go weiter. Okay. This is going to be a very interesting Gemara, friends. It's going to be a very, very interesting Gemara. It might be a little slow. I might have to explain things, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good because it's just a geschmack Gemara. It's a very Gemara-y Gemara that you have to Gemara it, and it's very good. Okay, here we go. Without further ado. Okay, so Shmas Mina. So says the Gemara, Shmas Mina manali biyodcha. Okay, fine. Basically, in our Mishnah, what we had said is that if Shimon says, I know for sure that it was a borrowed cow that died, and therefore you owe me. Reuven says, ich weiß nicht, I don't know. And the Mishnah said the halacha is, well, then Reuven has to pay, because Shimon was certain that it was a borrowed cow and that he has to pay. Reuven says he doesn't know, so he has to pay. So this implies that if Shimon, in a separate context, if Shimon, Shimon is now, we're not talking about Shimon the cow lender and Reuven the cow borrower. No, we're talking about Shimon the money lender and Reuven the money borrower. Okay, it's earlier stuff. Where does this? Where? I don't even know what's what anymore. Lenders and borrowers. Is that a BavaMetzia thing also? I can't even remember anymore. Is it BavaMetzia thing? Lender and borrower lent money $1,000 through. There's also BavaMetzia, right? I can't even remember. I don't even remember what's what anymore. Where? It probably came up in BavaMetzia already, right? It's all one big blur, I guess. Okay. I guess like lending stuff, it was definitely BavaMetzia stuff. But like, I guess lending stuff just feels so like ubiquitous. It just like feels like really, oh yeah, but like that also, well, come up, right? We're going to talk about, the truth is, BavaMetzia really. So BavaMetzia came up, as we're going to see today, came up in BavaMetzia. But the real sugya of BavaMetzia was like the beginning of BavaMetzia. Alright. Shnai Mochsen, I think, talked a lot about lending. Alright, let's go weiter. Anyways, this implies that in the context of lending money, so if Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100, and Reuven says, I don't know, so Reuven Shimon says you owe me, Reuven says I don't know, so Reuven would have to pay, right? In our Mishnah, going back to the cow case, if Shimon says the borrowed cow died, Reuven says I don't know, so Reuven has to pay, he's chayiv. So it sounds like in the case of the lending money, if Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100, and he says, I don't know, so you'd have to pay the $100. So Shmas Mina, Monali biyodcha, Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100, Ba'ala Omer, and Reuven says, En yodeh, says, Ich weiß nicht, chayiv, Reuven's going to have to pay. So Leima Tavet to Yufta de Rav Nachman. But let's say then that this is a kasha on Rav Nachman. Dit my Monali biyodcha, Ba'ala Omer, En yodeh. That Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, Ich weiß nicht. Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda Amar Chayiv. So Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda say Reuven has to pay Shimon. Okay, that's consistent. But Rav Nachman, Rav Yechanan Amri, Potter. Rav Nachman and Rabbi Yochanan say that Reuven is potter. Reuven doesn't have to pay. So meaning our Mishnah by the Shoel, right? Shimon says it's a borrowed cow that died. Reuven says, I don't know. He has to pay. And therefore we can conclude from here that if Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100, and Reuven says, I don't know, so he would have to pay. So this whole thing sounds like it's going to be a kasha in Rav Nachman / Rabbi Yochanan, who say that when Shimon says, Reuven, you owe me $100, Reuven says, ich weiß nicht, he's potter. So now listen to the Gemara, and this is where things get interesting. Kedom Rav Nachman, well, we explained the Mishnah like Rav Nachman, our Mishnah that says that he's chayiv, that Shimon says the borrowed cow died, and Reuven says, I don't know. So we say Reuven's chayiv. You know why he's chayiv? Kedam Rav Nachman could go sheyesh eisek shvua b'neiah. There's an eisek shvua. Hachanami could go sheyesh eisek shvua b'neiah. La. So our Mishnah, the reason why he's chayiv in our Mishnah, the reason why Reuven is chayiv in our Mishnah is because it's an eisek shvua. Who can tell me what an eisek shvua is? It's a gewaltige Zach. It's a gewaltige Zach. Okay. Mode b'miktsas, chever. Mode b'miktsas. As I said a few minutes ago, we're going to talk about mode b'miktsas today. What's mode b'miktsas? So mode b'miktsas is that Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, I owe you 50. Okay. Reuven says, I owe you 50. So now Reuven now has to swear that he's telling the truth, that he really does only owe 50, and he doesn't owe the other 50. Okay, so Reuven goes to Beis, right? So Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, I owe you $50. Reuven then goes to Bezdin and he has to swear that he's telling the truth, and he says, I swear that I only owe $50, I don't owe the other $50. Okay. What happens though if Reuven says, I owe you $50, what about the other $50? I don't know. Now that's where things get interesting. And that's this Eisek Shvua situation. So when Reuven says that so Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, I owe you $50. Now he has to swear. The thing is, what's he going to swear about? Because so he says, I owe you 50. In terms of the other 50, he says, I don't know. He can't go to Bezdin and swear that he doesn't know. He doesn't swear that he doesn't know. You swear yes or no. You don't swear I don't know. Right? A swear is a serious thing. Right? You don't go to Bezdin and just swear that you don't know. No, you swear a yes or you swear a no. You don't swear that you don't know. Okay? So, this is it. Now what's interesting about this scenario is that he's chayiv to swear, because he was modeh b'miktsas, he's chayiv to swear, but he can't swear, because he doesn't know what he's swearing about. So then he has to pay. Since he would swear, if he swore he would be potter, but he can't swear because he doesn't know, so therefore he's chayiv, therefore he has to pay. And that's what our Mishnah is talking about. The Gemara is going to explain how exactly our Mishnah is talking about, what's going on, how our Mishnah is a scenario where he has to swear but he can't swear. But says Rav Nachman, our Mishnah is specifically talking about Eisek Shvua. Our Mishnah is specifically talking about a scenario where he's chayiv a shvua, but he can't swear, so therefore that's why he's chayiv. Okay, so what's this Eisek Shvua at the bottom of Tzadi Zayin and Beis? It's like Rav says, Rav Monali biyod. Shimon says, Reuven, you owe me $100. V'ala Omer, and Reuven says, Ein l'cha biyod lechamishim. No, I owe you 50. V'ashar. And in terms of the other 50, Eni yodea, I don't know. Mitoch she'enu yachol lishova, since he can't swear, because you can't swear that he doesn't know, that's not something that's swearable, mishalim. Therefore he has to pay. So here as well, mishkachas la, so our Mishnah is talking about reisha bebeis v'seifa begimel. Okay, so in order to explain how our Mishnah is also talking about Eisek Shvua, you would have to say that the reisha being when he borrows the cow for half a day and rents it for half a day, or he borrows it for one day and rents it for another day. He's talking about 2 cows. And the third case in the Mishnah, where he borrowed 1 cow and rented another cow, would be talking about, we're talking about 3 cows. Okay, we're going to explain it. So Mishkach is a Reisha Bebeis. So the Reisha we can explain talking about 2 cows, V'Sefer Begimel, and the Sefer is talking about 3 cows. Reisha Bebeis. Okay, so the first case, where he rents the cow for half a day and borrows it for half a day, or borrows it for 1 day and rents it for 1 day. He's talking about 2 cows. The Omerle, that Shimon alleges, Beis Paris Mosarti Licha, I gave you, Ruvain, 2 cows. Palge de Yom B'Shelu, Falge de Yom B'Schirus. Half of the day they were rented, and half of the day they were lent, they were borrowed, and half of the day they were rented. Inami, alternatively, Chad Yom B'Shelu, V'Chad Yom B'Schirus, or 1 day it was lent, and the other day was rented. Umesu Tarvayu, and alleges Shimon that both died be'idan she'ela during the borrowing period, not during the rental period. And therefore, you need to pay me for 2 cows. V'amar le'shoyel, and Ruvain says, Chada in. Okay, with regarding to one of the 2 cows, yes. Okay, so there's the mode of BavaMetzia there. So he admits to 50% of Shimon's claim. He says, okay, regarding one of the cows, yes. Be'idan Shela Mesa, it died during the borrowing period, and I need to pay you for that. Okay, fine. But ve'idach, in terms of the second cow though, lo yadaina, I taka don't know, I be'idan Shela Mesa, ve'i be'idan Schirus Mesa. I don't know, Take, if it died during the borrowing period or during the rental period, and therefore, I Pasha don't know. The mitoch she'enu yochel lishava mishalim, and he was modeh b'miktzas. He admitted that he owes one of, he needs to pay for one of the cows. In terms of the other one, he's saying he doesn't know, so he can't swear since he doesn't know, and therefore he has to pay. And that's what our Mishnah is talking about. V'seifa, and when we're talking about the different cows, right? One of them was a rental and one of them was a borrowal. Well then, V'seifa, Begimel, the Seifa is talking about, it can be explained with 3 cows. The Amarle, that Shimon alleges, Gimel Paris Nosati L'cha, Ruvain, I gave you 3 cows. Beis B'Shela, 2 of them were lent, were borrowed. V'achaz B'Schirus, and 1 was rented. Umesu Hane Tarte D'Shela, and the 2 borrowed cows died, and therefore you need to pay me both cows, for both cows. V'amar le'shoyel, and Ruvain says, in chad d'sheila mesa. Yeah, okay, it's true. One of the 2 cows that died was the borrowed one, which obviously mathematically that would have to be the case. If you have 3 cows, only one of them was rented, the other 2 were borrowed, and 2 of them died. One of them is going to have to be one of the borrowed ones. But idach, in terms of the second one that died, lo yadaina idashela mesa, I don't know if it was the borrowed cow that died, v'dekaima d'schirusi, and the one that's still alive is the rental. Idashirus mesa, or maybe the rental died, v'ha dekaima d'shelahi, and the one that is still alive is the borrowed one. And because he can't swear, meaning, so he's BavaMetzia betzim, right? Meaning, Shimon says, you owe me 2 cows. Reuben says, look, I definitely owe you 1 cow. I don't know about the second one. So, since he can't swear about the second one, because he Pasha doesn't know, so therefore he has to pay. That is how we can explain our Mishnah when we say that he's chayiv, when he says that he doesn't know. Because it's talking about this Asik Shvu, it's talking about when he's chayiv a Shvu already, but he can't actually, when he's chayiv shvur, but he can't swear, so therefore he has to pay. Uli Rami Bar Chome. Now, according to Rami Bar Chome, the Amar who says, Dalid Shoybim Tzrichin Kfira b'miktzas v'odah b'miktzas. Now, Rami Bar Chome has an interesting opinion. It has to do with the Gemara in Bava Kama, Daf Kuf Zayin. about Moda b'Miktsas and Eruve Parshis. Is Moda b'Miktsas by alone, or is it by Shomim, Dal Shomim, whatever it is? Says Rabban Bar Chama had gesagt that when it comes to Dal Shomim, here's the crucial point. So first of all, he says that Moda b'Miktsas is Davka by Shomim, not necessarily, not by alone. Fine. Dal Shomim tzrichin kfira b'Miktsas voda b'Miktsas. Okay, in order to swear by that, when they deny, they need kfira b'Miktsas voda b'Miktsas. But here's the important part. Kfira b'Miktsas voda b'Miktsas. According to Rabbi Bar Chama, Moda b'Miktsas is not alone. Is not enough alone to be mechayev v'shvua. You would actually have to deny part of it in order to be chayev v'shvua. So meaning, in a situation where Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. Reuven says, so basically in Rava's example, for example, right? If we just read Rava's example from the top of the Amud, Manali biyadcha, Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100. V'ala Omer, Reuven says, Ein l'cha biyadei l'chamishim, I owe you 50. V'ashar, and regarding the other 50, Eini yodea, I don't know. So he didn't deny the other half. He didn't deny any part of it. He admitted to half of it. The other half, he says, no, he didn't deny anything. Right? So therefore, when it comes to Daled Shomrim, okay, so our Mishnah is talking about Shomrim, right? It's talking about a Shoyel and a Socher, and we talked about Shimon says, I lent you 2 cows, and both of them died when they were, both cows that died were borrowed. Reuven says, one of them was definitely borrowed, the other one I don't know. So we were assuming up until now that he would be chayav v'shvua because he's admitting to one of them, and the other one he says he doesn't know, therefore he can't swear about it because he says he doesn't know, so therefore he has to pay. According to Rabbi Bar Chama, he wouldn't be chayav v'shvua for that because he didn't deny anything. He admitted that one of them he has to pay, the other one he says he doesn't know, but he didn't deny anything. He didn't say, I don't owe you that cow. So according to Rabbi Bar Chama, you won't be chayav v'shvua if you admit and also deny. So Rabbi Bar Chama, says the Gemara, according to Rabbi Bar Chama, the Amar, who says Daled Shomim, that when it comes to the 4 custodians, tzrichin kfira b'Miktsas voda b'Miktsas, in addition to admitting partially, you also have to deny partially. So mishkachas, so the way to understand our Mishnah and to explain how our Mishnah is talking about Eisik Shvuah, mishkachas lo reisha begimel v'seifa bedalid. Okay, so we had said initially that the reisha is bebeis and the seifa is begimel. Now, in order to explain according to Rabbi Bar Chama, you say that the reisha is begimel and the seifa is bedalid. Reisha begimel, the reisha is talking about 3. The Omar lei, that Shimon says to Reuven, Gimel paris nosati lecha. I gave you 3 cows. Palgid yom b'shelu, palgid yom b'schirus. Half the day was borrowed and half the day was rented. Inami, alternatively, chad yom b'shelu, v'chad yom b'schirus. One day it was borrowed and the other day was rented. And now here's the big claim. Umesu gimel kulu beidon shela. And all 3 cows died during the borrowing period. All 3 cows died during the borrowing period, right? So Shimon says to Reuven, I gave you 3 cows. Let's say half the day was borrowed, half the day was rented. All 3 of them, it says Shimon, all 3 of them died during the borrowing period. The Amar le Shoyel and Reisha and Reuven says, okay, look, Chada lo hayu dvar mi'olam. Okay, regarding one of your cows, I don't know what you're talking about. You never lent it to me. Okay, so that's that. I obviously don't owe you for something that I never had. V'chada in beidon sheila mesa. In terms of the other one, yes, it did die during the borrowing period, and I owe you. V'idach, and in terms of the third one, the third claim, lo yodaino beidon sheila mesa v'ibidon schirus. And in terms of the other cow, I don't know if it died during the borrowing period or during the rental period. So in that case, the mitoch she'enu yochol lishav mishalim, because he can't swear, he pays. So in that case, he had everything that, right, all the necessary components for Eisik Shvuah, right? He admitted that he owes one of the cows. He denied ever having had one of the cows, and he said he doesn't know about one of the other cows. And because he can't swear, because he says he doesn't know, So he's not exactly sure what he's going to swear about, so therefore he can't swear, and therefore he has to pay. Seifa Bidalid, and the Seifa where it's talking about one cow was borrowed, the other cow was rented. So Bidalid, you would explain it with 4 cows. Damle, that Shimon says to Reuven, Dalid paras nasati l'cha, I gave you 4 cows. Gimel b'sheila chad b'schirus, 3 of them were borrowed, 1 of them was rented. Umesu anach gimel d'sheila, and 3 of them died, says Shimon. And those 3 that died were the borrowed ones that died. The only one that's alive is the rented one. The 3 borrowed ones died, and you have to pay me for them. V'amalei, Reuven says to Shimon, Reuven says to Shimon, Chada leho dvar me'olam. Okay, in terms of one of these cows that you're saying that you lent me, you didn't. V'chada, and in terms of another one, in d'sheila mesa, yes, one of the borrowed cows died and I owe you for it. Ve'idach, and in terms of the other one that died, lo yadaina id'schirus mesa, I don't know if it is the rented one that died. V'dekaima she'ed d'she'ela, and the one that is still alive is the borrowed one. Oh, d'she'ela mesa, or if the borrowed one died, v'dekaima d'schirus, and the one that's still alive is the rented one. The mitoch she'enu yachol l'shav mishalim, and in that case, since he can't swear because he said he doesn't know about part of it, so therefore he pays, right? So in that case as well, he had admitted that he owes one, he had denied another one, and he said he doesn't know about another one, so therefore it has admittance, it has denial, it has I don't know, and therefore it has all the ingredients for this Asek Shvua, and therefore he needs to swear, but he can't swear, so therefore he's chayiv. Okay, that was like the kind of sugya part of the day, and okay, the rest of the daf is not that crazy. We just got to get to the Mishnah. All right. Ze omer she'ula v'ze omer sechura. Okay, what was it? Okay. So this was the second to last case in the Mishnah, right? Shimon says that a borrowed cow died and you owe me. V'ze omer sechura, and Reuven says no, it was a rented cow that died and I don't owe you. Yishava asocher sheschura mesa. So Reuven swears that it was the rented one that died, and he's potter. Ve'amai, why does Reuven have to swear? Mashatanu lo hodalo, mashahodalo lo toano. Why would Reuven have to swear if it's moed BavaMetzia? So, for example, if Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me $100, and Reuven says, I owe you 50 of those 100. So it's not apples and oranges, right? It's like, you owe me 100 apples. He says, I owe you 50 apples. It's apples and apples. So therefore, you have to swear. Moed BavaMetzia, right? You're admitting to part of it, but not all of it. This is apples and oranges. Shimon is saying a borrowed cow died. Reuven is saying a rented cow died. They're 2 separate things. So why would Reuven have to swear? So Amar Ula says, Ula al yidei Gilgul. It's a Gilgul shvuah. It's a Gilgul shvuah. A Gilgul shvuah is that once already you have to swear for something else, so you swear for this as well. De Amar le ishtabli izo mias de kedarka mesa. Chevre. When a shomer is potter, he's not completely off the hook. He still has to swear, right? A shomer chinam, for example, who's the most lenient of all the shomrim, he still has to swear, right? If a shomer chinam is watching a cow and the cow gets stolen, so he still has to swear that he wasn't negligent. So while he's potter, he still has to swear about it. So even if what Reuven is saying is correct, which is that he was that he was a socher, that the rented cow died, and therefore he's potter, he's still going to have to swear that he wasn't negligent. So he already has to swear. So once already he's swearing, let him also swear that he's telling the truth, that it was the borrowed cow that died, and that it wasn't the rented one that died. No, the opposite. That it was the rented one that died, and that he's potter, and that it wasn't the borrowed one that died. So again, V'amai, let's read it again. Why does Reuven have to swear? Mashe Tuano lo hodalo, what Shimon claimed Reuven didn't admit. Mashe hodalo, what Reuven admitted lo Tuano, Shimon didn't claim. Kilutz apples and oranges. That Shimon says to Reuven, look, ishtabli izo mias de kedarka mesa. Look, you have to swear to me anyways that you weren't negligent, that it died kedarka. Umigo the mishtabli de kedarka mesa. Once already, Reuven is swearing that the ox died naturally and not negligently. Mishtabanami deschura mesa. So he also swears that it was the rented cow, and therefore he's potter and not the borrowed cow, for which you would be chayiv. If each one says, look, I don't know. Reuven says, look, I don't know if it was a borrowed cow that died or a rented cow that died. Shimon says, neither do I. Well, in that case, yachloku, they divide it, they split it. Hamani sumchisi. This is like sumchis. We've seen this before. Where have we seen this? Oh, it's not saying where we've seen it. We've seen this plenty of times. It's like sumchis. Okay. Where have we seen this? Bavakamed aflamed hey. Okay, and there I guess it will tell us where else. We've seen it a bunch of times. That says sumchis maman amutu b'safik cholkin. That when you have a suffix about who's owed money, you split it. And we're going to see it again. I think maybe on tomorrow's daf or in 2 days' daf. We're going to see it again soon. Okay. Now, Ba'i Rib Abe Bar Mamel. So Rib Abe Bar Mamel asked the kasha. Sho'alo b'bailim. Okay. So if Reuven borrowed the cow and Shimon was working for him, so therefore he's potter, it was she'ele b'bailim. Sacha shelo b'bailim. But then before he returned it, he hadn't yet returned the borrowed cow, he then rented it. Ma'u, so what's the halacha? Do we say, well, the borrowing and the rental are two separate, actions, I guess, are two separate things, and therefore even though it was she'ela b'bailim, he didn't do sechirus b'bailim, right? Shimon wasn't working for him at the time of the sechirus, and therefore, if it dies, or let's say it gets stolen, it would not be considered b'bailim, and he would be chayiv. Or Dilma, or perhaps sechirus b'sheila meshach shaycha, or perhaps, well, the interesting thing is that he was already a shoel. Shoel is the most stringent shomer. Is the most stringent of the custodians. So when he then becomes a renter, there is absolutely nothing that was added to his status. Well, he's chayiv b'gniv v'aveda. He was already chayiv for gniv v'aveda as a shoel. So there was nothing added to his status, and therefore it just sort of just gets swallowed up in a sense in his current status of being a shoel, and the status of a shoel was she'ela b'bailim, because when he borrowed it, the owner was Shimon was working for him, so he just continues with that status, and therefore even as a renter, if he would get stolen, he would be potter because of the fact that Shimon was initially working for him. Right, because he's already chayiv for gnev v'aveda as a shoel. So there's nothing new added. Im timtzalomar schira b'sheila meshach shaycha. And if you want to say, okay, if he was already a borrower and then he became a renter, there's nothing added, so therefore it's still going to be considered right bailav imo. But what if it was fakert? What about sachar b'bailim? Okay, what if he initially rented it b'bailim, and then shoala shalo b'bailim, and then later on he borrowed it, but Shimon wasn't working for him at the time. So do we say sheilus b'schirus vade lo shaycha? Do we say, well, borrowing is not included in renting because there is extra stringencies by borrowing, which is that he's chayiv for own sin, and that's not relevant to renting. So therefore, it's a separate thing, and the bailim status does not carry over. Dilmar perhaps came into shaycha b'miktsas. Well, since there are similarities, i.e., both by shoel and by socher, you're chayiv for gniv v'aveda. Kiman d'shaycha b'chulo dami. So we can just kind of say that right that it all kind of carries over, and the bail of imo status would carry over as well. And if we say that we don't say that we don't say that the bail of imo status would carry over, what about sha'ala b'bailim? What if he borrowed it? It's going to be a teku, by the way. So what if he borrowed it b'bailim, v'sachra shelo b'bailim, and then he rented it shelo b'bailim, but then v'chazar v'sha'ala, but then he went back once again and borrowed it again. So Mao, do we say hadar asya l'she'ela l'duchte? Do we say that when he borrowed it and then rented it and then borrowed it again, so the second borrowing just goes back to the initial borrowing, which would be b'bailim, or maybe the rental in the middle kind of broke up the borrowings and it's not b'bailim. Okay, Sachar b'bailim. What if he rented it b'bailim v'shala, and then he borrowed it b'bailim v'chazav v'sachra, but then he rented it once again? Ma'u, what's the halacha? Miyamin asya la schirus l'duchta. Does the final schirus like go back to the original schirus and it's b'bailim? Or maybe the borrowing in the middle broke it up. Take we say chveisnish. Chaver, that was daf tzadiches of Masechta BavaMetzia. We're almost up to daf kuf. Daf kuf. For me, I probably said this before, a Masechta that's more than 100 daf kuf is like a turning point. It's like, once you hit daf kuf, you're on the home stretch. Now, it's not going to be the case for Bava Basra, which is 176 daf, but for BavaMetzia, which is 119 daf, once we get to kuf, it's the home stretch. And this was daf tzadiches. We had a very interesting sugya of Asek Shvua, about a situation where you're chayav shvua, but you can't actually swear, so therefore you're going to be chayav. We saw the opinion of Rami Bar Chama, who says that by both the mikzas, it's not enough just to be admit partially, but you also have to actually deny partially, which is an interesting thing. Then we saw some other things. We talked about Gilgal Shvua Shtickle, which was also interesting. Sumchas' opinion of Mammon Amutal B'Safek Cholkin. So a lot of interesting stuff on this daf. That was daf tzadiches of Masechta BavaMetzia. I hope you enjoy. Peace out.